Press.
I call the regular meeting of the City of Ashland Planning Commission to order for January 13th, 2026. I will note that our meetings are available on Zoom and on RVTV. The public can find information on how to participate in Planning Commission meetings in our public notices, as well as directions on how to find the full meeting materials, applications, and staff reports. I note that we do have 7 of 7 commissioners here, so we do have a quorum. Announcements. Brandon, do you have any for us?
Thank you, Chair Werner. I would like to announce that the city will hold its annual town hall this Wednesday, January 21st at 5:30 to 7 o'clock at Ashland High School and their theater building. So everybody is welcome to attend and see what has occurred in the city over the last year and what is to come in the next. Thank you.
Great, we'll all be there. The consent agenda, we have approval of December 9th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Would somebody like to propose a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I propose a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Public forum. If you wish to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, please fill out a pink speaker's request form. It's in the back, and I don't see anybody that's come forward, so we'll move on. Unfinished business. Our first item is the approval of findings for PA-T2-2025-00062 at 44 Scenic Drive and the vacant lot next door. Applicants are asking for approvals of 4-lot PSO subdivision, exception to street standards, and tree removal permit. And you have revised findings in front of you. Head nods. Revised findings. Okay. I do need to ask if commissioners have had any ex parte contact since our last meeting. Commissioner McCracken Jen?
No.
Commissioner Linder?
No.
Commissioner Marr?
No.
Commissioner Herron?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Kincairn?
Nope.
Commissioner Phillips?
No ex parte.
And I have not had any ex parte contact either. Any questions on what's in front of you? Hearing none, I would accept a motion. Russell?
I do have a quick question here. There seems to be different mentions of significant trees under 2.6 and 2.91, and I just wanted to check with staff and see if that had been reconciled or needed to be.
2.6 and 2.9.1?
Correct.
Yeah, in 2.9.1, there's an exception to street standards, removal of 3 trees and removal of 5 significant trees. Is that a conflict?
I
A
think
duplicate?
just that in 2.6, it mentions a different number of significant trees. And I wasn't sure if those are different trees or if they should be the same trees.
So in 2.6, it does state what the original number was, and then we received revisions. So it has the updated to 10 trees total, 7 of which are significant, and then 2.91, the copy I have doesn't have the revision, but the revision does have the correct number in it.
It's not additional, it's just this, it's the same.
Yeah, there's two that were proposed for removal originally that are being protected now instead. And then there was one tree from the 11 that was accidentally counted twice.
Okay, so just for clarity, the one that I have here that says removal of 3 trees and removal of 5 significant trees under 2.9.1, that's since been revised? Or that's the same? Sorry, I'm just confused.
Yeah, so the correct total of trees from 11 was actually supposed to be 10, and then they were protecting 2. So there's a total of 8 that are being removed. 5 are significant, and 3 are just regular regulated trees.
Okay, thanks for the clarification on that.
Okay, so the document that you gave me, which says in 2.9.1, removal of 3 trees and removal of 5 significant trees is correct?
Yeah, so total of 8.
Okay. Commissioner McCracken, Jen?
To make sure I didn't miss anything, since there wasn't a lot of time to review the revision, is there anything else significant that changed?
The only other change was just correcting January of 2025 to January 2026.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other questions? Michael, will you call the roll?
Sorry, can you clarify who made a motion and who seconded?
Russ made it. And John
I
seconded.
will second it.
Commissioner McCracken Jen.
Aye.
Commissioner Leininger.
Yes.
Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
Commissioner Herron.
Yes.
Commissioner Kincairn.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, the motion is approved. Moving on to our second item of business, after I sign this thing. We're at a continuation of a type 2 public hearing from December 9, 2025. It's for Planning Action PA-T2-2025-00062 at 2262 and 2270 Ashland Street. And this is an application for site design review to redevelop the property into 2 commercial, 2-story office buildings, a tree removal permit, and a request for phased development. And additionally, a property line adjustment has been approved, but as I understand it, not recorded. The public hearing was opened on December 9th, 2025, and was continued to tonight due to a fault in the public notice, which has been corrected. And Commissioners, once again, ex parte contact. Commissioner McCracken Jen,
No.
Commissioner Lininger,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Marr,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Herron,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Kincairn,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Phillips.
No ex parte.
And I have not had any ex parte contact either. I will acknowledge we have received additional written material and testimony from the applicant in the form of a letter from arborist Thomas Madeira. And to continue with the public hearing, does anyone wish to testify in this matter? Okay, seeing none. I do have a question for the applicant. Is the applicant here? Could you state your name and,
Yeah, Dan Horton, P.O. Box 682 Eagle Point,
thank you.
agent for Steve Reed on this redevelopment.
Okay. So my question, well, I have 2 questions, actually. Did the applicant, there was much discussion last time about the restaurant being notified.
I
Did-
spoke with Mr. Reed today, as a matter of fact, and he has spoken with the restaurant owners, and basically they've agreed to accommodate the restaurant in the new construction once they demo the existing building.
Okay, great. And my other question is, has the property line adjustment been actually recorded?
I had a hard time understanding what you said.
Has the property line adjustment actually been recorded?
I don't believe it has been. It's been approved by the city staff, but it's not actually been recorded.
Okay, so my sense is we need to get that recorded first.
The land use code wouldn't be offended with those buildings being constructed with the property lines being where they are. But you could certainly, actually, I'm going to take that back for 1 second because one of the property lines would go through the building. So having it recorded prior to the issuance of the building permit would be reasonable.
Okay. So we can add that as a condition?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, hearing none.
So, Chair, before you entertain a motion perhaps for the findings, I'd like to address a couple of slight amendments that were made based on the revised versions that you all have.
Sure, go ahead.
For the most part, there was a couple of edits that I was asked to make for readability where acronyms were spelled out. So KSF was turned into thousands of square feet. There was another acronym that was taken out. And there was a slight rewording to a section that dealt with the tree removals. And there was a removal of condition of approval number 7 that dealt with a public alley that isn't relevant. So in the version of findings that are before you, the only other substantive change was that on the bottom of the first page, the 5th recital was included, which is a segment from the staff report dealing with the demolition of the buildings. And so those are the only changes that were made to the findings that are presented before you tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Go ahead.
So, and I ask this also as a member of the Public Arts Advisory Committee. It's clear in the plan that there's space indicated for public art. Is there a commitment to actually provide the art? Or what is the plan, I guess I would say?
That would be up to the developer. We don't have a commitment. I mean, is that a code requirement, a commitment to provide public art?
There's a requirement for several different features to be in the plaza, but the plans include covered seating areas, trees. And so even if there were not a public art element, they would still be satisfying the requirements for the plaza to meet the site design review standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion? Go ahead.
So can you refresh me on where we are in the process here? Are we've closed the public
No, I need to
hearing
close the
now,
public,
right?
no, I
Okay.
need to do that,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
So, hearing no objection, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and close the record. Okay, now we can discuss it and deliberate and make a motion.
And Chair, I would just say if you wanted to include the condition of approval regarding recording the property line adjustment prior to the issuance of the building permit, we would need to print a new set of findings because we don't have a set of findings that has that included,
Correct.
but we're more than happy to do that.
Wouldn't that happen anyway? That they would have to do that?
Yes, I mean, even without that condition of approval, we would be remiss to issue a building permit that sits astride a property line.
Well, building department wouldn't do it, wouldn't?
Correct, but I mean, out of an abundance of caution, to include that condition of approval would certainly not be an issue.
Make it clear to everybody.
Just more paper.
Yeah.
So it would be prior to issuance of building permits?
Yeah.
Yeah, because currently that property line, as presently drawn, goes through the western building.
Thanks, Aaron.
So, you could add it to condition number 4, which talks about plans submitted before the building permit shall be in conformance with those approved as part of this application, blah, blah, blah. If a sentence at the end could be added that said, and the lot line adjustment shall be recorded prior to issuance of building permit.
Did you?
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve Planning Action PA-T2-2025-0062 for 2262 Ashland Street, as presented, subject to staff's conditions of approval, and as amended on the record to add a condition that the approved property line adjustment shall be recorded prior to issuance of any permits or final approvals that rely on the adjusted property boundary, and to correct minor typos in the findings and conditions.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this permit. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Russell, I think you worded that really well.
Okay, Michael, will you call the roll?
Commissioner McCracken Jim.
Aye.
Commissioner Lininger.
Yes.
Commissioner Marr.
Aye.
Commissioner Herron.
Yes.
Commissioner Kincairn.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, that issue also is approved. And we move on to our next issue, which is a type 2 public hearing being held before the Planning Commission, with the Planning Commission making a decision afterwards, and that decision is appealable to City Council. The application before us is PA-T2-2025-00065. It's a request for concurrent outline and final plan approval for a 4-lot performance standards option PSO subdivision. The parent parcel is proposed to have the existing home demolished, and 4 single-family homes are proposed in its place. Additionally, the request before us is for 4 CUPs, 4 conditional use permits, to exceed the maximum permitted floor area, MPFA, in a historic district, 1 for each lot. 2, for a tree removal permit to remove a significant 33-inch DBH tree, and 3, for an exception to street standards to not install standard street improvements. And the site is 431 North Main Street. The applicant is Rogue Planning and Development Services. The property owner is Rogue Holdings LLC. The comp plan designation is multifamily residential. The zoning is R2. The map is 39-1E-05-DA, and the tax lot is 7,300. I will once again ask the commission if they have had any ex parte contact and done a site visit. Let's start at this end this time. Commissioner Phillips.
No ex parte, but I have had a site visit.
Commissioner Kincairn.
I have been aware of that property for a long time. I did run into a historic commissioner after a gym class who mentioned the project, but that's it. I don't feel like it will impair my ability to make a decision or to sway me.
Thank you. Commissioner Herron?
I did a site visit today, and I've had no ex parte.
Commissioner Mauer?
I also did a site visit, and I've had no ex parte.
Commissioner Lininger?
I visited the site, but no ex parte contact.
Commissioner McCracken Jen?
No ex parte, I did drive by the site.
Okay. I'm not aware of any challenges for bias or prejudgment or personal interest, and I will acknowledge the 2 letters that we have received. One is from Abigail's Bed and Breakfast Inn and Adam and Susan Lemon, and the second is from Bayberry Bed and Breakfast Inn and Oregon Wellness Retreat, Jackie Mann. So I will open the public hearing. Is there a staff presentation?
Hi, Veronica Allen, Associate Planner. We are here tonight to talk about 431 North Main Street. It is a request for concurrent outline and final plan approval for a 4-lot Performance Standards Option or PSO subdivision. The proposed subdivision includes 4 residential lots in total located at 431 North Main Street. Additionally, it also includes 4 conditional use permits, or CUPs, 1 for each of the residential lots, to exceed the MPFA, or maximum permitted floor area, by up to 25% in a historic district. There's also a request for an exception to street standards to not install standard street improvements due to the existing sidewalk. And there is a request for tree removal for one significant tree, and then revised tree inventory showed that there was also 1 dead apple tree, but since it is a dead tree, it would not be regulated. So this is the location of the property. There is currently a 7-unit multifamily development there. It's been added onto throughout the years into its current configuration. This kind of shows a general outline of how the properties would be subdivided, as well as the tree of heaven, the significant tree along Nursery Street, and then the location of the apple tree, which is dead, located within the building envelope of Lot 2. For the Performance Standards Option subdivision, it uses the Performance Standards chapter in 1839010. It allows for a more flexible design than would normally be allowed through a regular subdivision. Designs typically stress energy efficiency, architectural creativity, and innovation, among other things, use of natural features of the landscape to their greatest advantage, and providing for a quality of life equal to or greater than that provided in developments built under the standard zoning codes. Generally are aesthetically pleasing, provide for more efficient land use, and or reduce the impact of development on the natural environment and neighborhood. This map shows the crosshatched areas where the performance standards overlay applies throughout the city. In this particular case, they're able to use the performance standards option since the property is zoned R2, which is one of the different options that you can use when it's outside of the performance standards overlay. In the case of this subdivision, the density is actually the same if it were a normal subdivision or a PSO subdivision, the main difference being how setbacks and other dimensions work for that. So in either case, the base density is 4.3 dwelling units. A cottage housing development would allow for about the same amount. In the staff report, I will note that there was a calculation for the density, and at the beginning part of the calculation, it did incorrectly reference 3.6 dwelling units. That should actually be 13.5 dwelling units. The calculation that was in brackets behind it is correct. For the property lines and their setbacks, in a performance standards option subdivision, it is subject to the parent parcel property lines and their yard setbacks. So the parent parcel front yard would be this yellow line along North Main Street on the right of this photo. The northern side, or the orange line along Nursery, would be considered a street side yard. The green line on the south would be considered just a regular side yard, and the blue line would be the rear yard for the parent parcel. In this case, it gets a little bit more confusing because in a historic district, there's a 20-foot setback on front yards, and for lots 1, 2, and 3, their front yards are actually the orange or north property line, so they would have a 20-foot setback from the property line on Nursery Street. And then the bigger house on North Main Street would have its own 20-foot setback from North Main. The CUP to exceed the maximum permitted floor area, or MPFA, is for each one of the residential lots. Approving it would allow up to an additional 25% from what the standard MPFA would be allowed. MPFA is calculated using the lot size and a formula in the table from chapter 1825070. So here I've kind of outlined the proposed lot area for each of the lots, and then what the adjustment factor from that table would be. And then it gives the calculated MPFA, which is just the standard straightforward MPFA that would be allowed. So in this case, it ranges from about 1350 to 1921 for each of the lots. And then the 1.25 MPFA that's highlighted in that yellow, that would be what would be approved with a CUP if up to 25% were to be approved, which would then make it range from about 1687 to 2401 for each of the lots. And then I just have highlighted in green underneath that what the applicant is proposing for the square footage that would count towards the MPFA, and all of them are within the 25% allotment if approved. At the bottom of this, it kind of shows that they would range from about 19.8% over to 24.6% over if approved with the CUPs. The Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, or HPAC, provided recommendations on the designs. The single-family residences for lots 1 through 3, they had concerns with repetitive designs, particularly when it comes to the front-facing garages. They said that it gives a cookie-cutter type character, not typically seen in historic districts, and that if one of them were to be flipped so that the garage were on the opposite side instead, it would minimize that effect. And then it would also better satisfy driveway separation requirements, as well as provide a visual break in massing. The SRO, or single room occupancy, that is proposed for lot 4, it was stated that there were concerns with the design not keeping with the historic district development standards, mostly in terms of scale, massing, roof form, and entrances. They recommended segmenting the building more to bring a central element forward to provide articulation in the street-facing facade along North Main Street and along Nursery Street. They also recommended adding secondary gable elements to provide more breakup of the mass, more substantial pitch to the roof, and potentially hipping the roof to provide greater articulation to the form and better fit with the surrounding historic neighborhood. They also recommended adjusting exterior treatment in terms of the porch and railings, doors, access points, and coverings, and that overall they felt that the design needed more work to break the mass into separate forms. Subsequent to the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee meeting, the applicant did provide some revised renderings. So these renderings have not been reviewed by HPAC as of yet, but this is the revised design that we received. As part of the exception request to street standards, there is currently a 5 to 5.5 foot wide sidewalk both along North Main and Nursery Street, but there are not any street trees or park row, and at least along Main Street there is a retaining wall, so it would be a bit hard to install that there. Current standards would require a 5 to 6 foot wide sidewalk with a 7-foot planting strip. Due to the difficulty of getting that planting strip developed there was the request for exception. The applicant, as part of that request, has also proposed to dedicate an easement for future right-of-way improvements, which would require an LID agreement or a local improvement district agreement to be recorded on each of the properties once platted, along with an irrevocable consent to dedicate additional right-of-way, additional right-of-way to that street improvement area. For the tree removal and protection, there is the one significant tree, the tree of heaven, 33-inch DBH. It was noted to be in poor condition. Originally, there was not a arborist report that went along with that. Subsequent to the tree committee meeting and the staff report going out, there has been an arborist report submitted. I believe that went out with the memo earlier that was emailed and should be printed out here for you as well. One other tree, which I previously mentioned that was omitted, was the apple tree, the 13-inch DBH apple tree, which is dead, so it wouldn't be a regulated tree, but I did want to bring it up just so the tree inventory makes sense. Staff and the Tree Management Advisory Committee were originally hesitant to approve the tree of heaven for removal without additional evidence of the condition of the tree. Now that staff has made on-site visits, more photos were submitted, and an arborist report was submitted, it's more documentation to back up that claim that it's in poor condition. Here is that updated tree inventory that I showed earlier. It shows the 2 trees on the property, as well as 3 trees off-site on the neighboring property, which would be protected, and then the 2 to be removed. The approval criteria includes the outline plan and final plan for the performance standard subdivision, as well as the conditional use permit criteria for each of those 4 CUPs to exceed MPFA by up to 25%. The exception to street standards to not install a park row at this time and not to fully improve that street improvement. And the tree removal criteria to remove the significant tree. I briefly went over some of these, but the staff report makes reference to a right-of-way improvement easement throughout, as well as specifically in proposed condition 7A, but it should be changed or added to include irrevocable consent to dedicate within that language, especially in the condition, which is actually on this slide, sorry. So it says right-of-way improvement easements or irrevocable consent to dedicate agreements proposed as part of this approval, which that should actually say and, not or. And then adding condition 8D, which is just another condition to include that consent to dedicate agreement. And then adding 10B, which is the mitigation measures for the tree of heaven. So it's in conjunction with the tree removal, appropriate mitigation measures shall be implemented to prevent the spread of the tree of heaven. And then there was a modification to condition 8A. It's not adding or taking anything away from it. It's just reordering it to make it make more sense with what the process actually is for review and implementation of a storm drainage plan. Any questions?
So you are recommending that the tree of heaven be taken out? Staff is.
We're recommending, based on the fact that we have new submittals that have been reviewed by the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, that the application be continued. If you
Right.
continue it on that basis, would give us a chance to have the Tree Management Advisory Committee review the arborist report. But to be honest, after staff's assessment on site, I think we're certainly comfortable with what the arborist has provided.
Okay.
But we would still like to have the item continued until February 10th, just to accommodate further historic review.
Carrie?
So, because they're not having to do the street improvements, is that why there's no landscape plan? Or would street, like a street improvement plan for trees and stuff, or are they not required to do that?
So street trees would be required every 30 feet as the code requires.
But they're not on the plans. Is that correct? Or am I missing something?
I believe, and it wasn't in the slide, there was a exhibit that shows trees in the front yards where a planting strip would eventually end up if it were to be improved.
As in the elevations or in a site plan?
It was in one of the exhibits.
It was a site plan exhibit.
Okay.
But as
Sorry.
a single-family project, they're not required to provide a separate landscape plan because it's not subject to landscape and irrigation requirements.
So, but
I mean, if we wanted to condition it, we could require an irrigation plan be provided with tree specimens, placement, and irrigation.
yeah, I think if they're
Yeah.
taking out the one tree that's there, then we should, yeah.
Susan? Oh, sorry.
I mean, to the point on single family, and maybe I'm showing my ignorance here, how does this building that's proposed in the front qualify as a single family residence? I mean, it looks like where I went to Campfire Girl Camp.
So for a single-family home, typically, we would allow a single kitchen with up to 5 unrelated people as a definition of a family. That family definition actually violates fair housing law. So if we're talking about a shared kitchen and 6 bedrooms, and the number of bedrooms is not really something we can regulate given fair housing law, it, from a code perspective, is really looked at as a single family. There is also a state law that says if we're treating it separately as a single room occupancy, that we have to allow that. But we currently don't have any of that implemented in our code. But it's similar to what you saw, or some commissioners saw at 880 Park Street, where there were apartments that were treated as quads that had multiple bedrooms rented separately around a single shared kitchen. So it from a staff perspective and from the building code, we're looking at it as a single-family structure that's just a kitchen with 6 shared bedrooms.
Even if I read this correctly, the kitchen is accessible from exterior entrance?
Yes.
It is unique, but again, there isn't a requirement in terms of internal access for the SRR units into a common kitchen, just that they have to have adequate access to it.
Thank you, Chair Brunner. So I just have a quick question, qualifying question about the park row. So is there, I was just there this afternoon, but I don't recall, is there a park row on the adjacent lots and across the street there? So there's not currently, and there's not anywhere else on the street. Okay. And then the other thing I just want to note is there seems to be about a 10-yard, 15-yard setback of all of the homes and structures along North Main Street. And they're proposing a much smaller setback, right? Is that correct? I just want to clarify.
So in a
20
historic
feet?
district, they would be required to have a 20-foot front
20
yard
foot,
setback.
okay.
And that would be regardless of which street it fronts on, just their frontage would have to have 20 feet from the property line.
So if they declared their frontage as Nursery Street, then it could go much closer along North Main.
So the frontage is the one that it fronts on for the street. So if it's on a corner like Lot 4 would be, in that case, there's 2 frontages, in quotes. At that point, the shorter of the frontages is determined to be the frontage for front yard setbacks.
On Main.
So it would be Maine. All
But
right.
just to clarify, because it's a performance standard subdivision, they have to provide a front yard consistent with the parent parcel. So if nursery was the front, they'd have to have two 20-foot setbacks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Werner. Veronica, thanks for the diagram with the setbacks. I was really struggling in the packet to figure that out, and it was really helpful what you showed. I wanted to ask a question about the LID. If the LID is granted, does the property owner pay for improvements if when it is ever done? So if, we kick the can down the road and we say we're not going to require them to do improvements at this time, later on, if we decide, okay, we're going to enact the LID and we're going to go ahead and make the improvements, who pays for that on that lot?
So I can answer this. An LID does establish a district of properties that would benefit from that local improvement district. Were the city to initiate a sidewalk park row installation all down Nursery, for instance, all properties within that service area would be incorporated into an LID. At which point, once defined, engineering done, project beginning, each property within that LID would be assessed a proportionate share of those improvements. So an LID could go further than just the subject properties. That said, the city doesn't currently have in its transportation system plan a proposed modification to Nursery Street or Main Street for that expansion. I think that this irrevocable consent to dedicate an LID is that in the future, if there was the capital improvement plan that stipulated for those improvements, these property owners would have already signed on to that local improvement district and couldn't remonstrate that formation. So it does give the city an ability to ensure that these properties would pay their proportionate share if a public project were to come forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Brandon. That's what I was looking for on that.
Here.
So I understand all that, but that's actually a lot of money per lot. Like if it happened today, it would be tens of thousands of dollars per lot. So I'm just concerned about people that would end up owning those lots with these modest homes on them suddenly being hit, even though they signed something. How obvious is it in the sale process that somebody's signing into something like that? I know it'll be on the deed.
It does come up in the title searches, and we're often contacted by property owners that are looking at purchasing a property that has an LID agreement within their title search as to checking with Public Works about the likelihood of that project going forward. Again, I think that the alternative would be to require the installation of a park row and sidewalk now, which again is additional cost for one that's already installed.
But that is something we do in certain circumstances. So it's only because the applicant's asking for this that it's even on the
And
table.
there's additionally, and I think Derek might be able to speak to this, ODOT just recently did a sidewalk corner improvement and all the engineering for ADA accessibility on that intersection. And it has an existing curbside sidewalk on
Right.
both Nursery and, so you can see the fresh concrete there was all done at a considerable expense
Right.
by ODOT. Were it to switch to a park row and a interior sidewalk, that work would have to be redone
Well,
as
it
well.
could just come around and.
It would, but as you can see on the frontage on North Main, it would
That
come
wouldn't
around
change.
and not connect back up to the existing sidewalk that continues south, so. And the applicants here and can speak to their request
And
for the
if I
exception.
can just add, I think it's probably highly unlikely there would ever be an LID on Nursery Street because there are existing sidewalks.
Right.
And I don't think we've ever done an LID to gain street trees. Probably the bigger concern for staff, not wanting to add expense for re-engineering that recently completed corner, was typically the issue that arises whenever anybody asks about doing anything to North Main is there's not the right-of-way available. So it was getting the right-of-way that would accommodate that required park row, so that if ever a project does come together on North Main, this just sort of lays the groundwork for it. So I mean, frankly, it was less about an LID than about just having the potential for that additional width along the frontage.
I was mainly thinking about Nursery
Yeah.
Street. I wasn't even thinking about
Yeah.
North Main, but, okay.
Thanks, Chair Werner. Okay, just one more question here. If the homes on lots 1 through 3 are changed and one of them gets mirrored so that the garages are next to each other, does that affect the requirements for how far the driveways are supposed to be apart from each other?
The driveway separation requirement stays the same. I think the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee recommended that the modification happen on Lot 3, which is closest to the SRO at the corner, which doesn't have a driveway. And that would still work, in the applicant's submittal, I think, called out the distances. So it would work for the separations. And it would also provide kind of a logical transition from the SRO being a single story, then a single story garage, and then to the 2-story.
Okay, thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Wow, more questions. Okay, John.
Well, technically, it's not a question.
Okay,
Can I make a comment?
sure.
I just note that, right next door on Nursery Street are 3 duplexes that are just boom, 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 right in a row. So,
Not
I
a
just-
store.
I mean, you can walk the street and see for yourself, so.
Susan?
Given that there's no parking being provided, where's the nearest transit stop?
Well, I will note there is
For
parking being
the,
provided.
sorry, for the SRO.
Right. So North Main Street is a transit line, so it's directly adjacent to the line. I'm not sure where the nearest stop is.
It's
Maybe
pretty,
the applicant can speak
it's
to that.
within a block.
And on the subject of parking, the applicant providing the 3 single-family homes with garages, it's important to note that parking is not a requirement for development. And so the provision of those parking spaces or garages actually does increase the unit sizes. We do count the parking area, the garage, as part of that maximum permitted floor area. So as you consider the conditional use permit component of the application, that is one thing to be aware of.
Okay. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you.
And would the applicant like to speak? You have 15 minutes.
We'll be winging things. I might have to just hold up my slides. Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, we just need a little reboot. Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Amy Gunter, Road Planning and Development Services. Not sure where I'm going. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, Commissioners. Amy Gunter, Rogue Planning and Development Services. I'm here this evening representing Rogue Holdings LLC. The property owner is out of town, and with me this evening is his representative, and then Nicholas Beal, who works with me. I'm not going to go over a lot of the same things that staff did to keep my presentation a little more brief, but the existing structure is approximately a 5,000 square foot historic contributing building. It's assumed that the oldest portion of this structure is in this sort of front corner area here. And over the years, that house was converted into multiple units with additional units added up the Nursery Street to the rear of this building. The condition of the structure is pretty bad, to say the least. There's some pictures depicting water damage within the structure, damaged windows and doors, roof framing from exterior buildings is inside of the other units. There's sill plate rot, there's just all sorts of electrical issues. There's just lots and lots of problems going on with this structure. So it was looked at for restoration and rehabilitation to 6, 7, or 8 units. It's kind of unclear exactly how many are there. And the estimate on that was well over $1 million. So then looking at just removing all of the additions, getting it back down to just the primary house, lifting that up and moving it forward, that was to the tune of about $750,000. So the costs of that far outweigh the costs of the demolition far outweighs the cost of construction of 4 new residential dwellings on the property. As noted, the proposed subdivision is for 4 lots, 3 developed with a type of permitted residential dwelling in the zone, detached residential. Lots 1 through 3 will be the detached residential lots. Try to turn off that. These 3. And then lot 4 is proposed to be developed with a single-room occupancy building. It is also a type of residential dwelling allowed in zones that allow for detached residential dwelling construction. As staff noted, the base density of the property is 4.7 dwelling units, whether it's an apartment development or a performance standard subdivision or a cottage house, it's pretty much landing on 4 dwelling units. Skidmore Square is the proposed name of the subdivision, and it's proposed to have 3 single vehicle garages with driveways accessing from Nursery and then closing the driveway apron that's closer to North Main Street. Following the discussion with the Historic Advisory Committee, Lot 3 was flipped and the driveway was moved to the east side of the lot. It retains driveway separation from North Main Street. It's required to be 35 feet and it's well over 75. And then there's more than 24 feet between each of the driveways. Though the municipal code does not require on-site parking, there were possibly 3 on-site parking spaces before, the remaining parking all on street. With this proposal, we're proposing 3 on-site parking spaces, the remaining on-street. It appears that there's roughly between 5 to 6 spaces along the frontage of the property on Nursery Street. The bus stop, to answer McCracken Jan's question, is in front of Louis, or not Louis, Big Al's. It's just catty corner across the street, so I think I'll be able to show it, but it's within maybe 150, 200 feet. I'm sorry? On both sides? Both sides, yes. This is the elevations of the 3 residential dwellings. As noted, this one, Lot 3, has revised plans that flip the garage to the other side. I do not have a rendering of that, but I do have the elevations that you also had. So Lot 1 is proposed at 3,600 roughly square feet. It has a maximum permitted floor area of around 1,482, and the proposed increase is to 1690 square feet, approximately a 19% increase. This is proposed Lot 2. It is 3172 square feet, proposed dwelling unit of 1682.75, which is about 5 square feet over the maximum permitted floor area. This one and the adjacent lot are the two that have the 24.6% increase request. This was Lot 3 proposed, matches your rendering. And then this is Lot 3 with it mirrored image. So it changes the look of the house and where the garages are and changes the sameness to a degree. The proposal for Lot 4, that lot is 5,213 square feet. The allowed maximum permitted floor area is about 1921. The proposed is 2352 with the 25% overage being about 2,400 square feet. This lot has the most prominent location at the intersection of North Main and Nursery Street. There are a mixture of architectural styles and zoning in this area, and there's all sorts of different architectural design types. There's vernacular I-homes, there's cottage houses, there's 90s houses, there's commercial buildings, all sorts of things. So there's a diverse range of architectural styles, orientation, and looks in this neighborhood. Staff prepared, showed you this, and I believe has a memo regarding the historic advisory commission's concerns, and based on their concerns, modifications to the building were made, addressing many of the historic advisory concerns. The roof height is similar to the range of historic structures adjacent and across the streets. The height and massing and width are similar to structures in the vicinity, with the introduction of the wraparound porch, which the previous one did not have the wraparound porch. The introduction of railings, the entry stairs, the porch goes all the way around and has the introduction of these gables. It breaks up the mass, reduces the singular monolithic form, and relieves some of the concerns regarding massing, orientation, and scale of the building. The roof pitch was also increased from 5 and 12, which is sort of a ranch-style type of roof pitch, and it was increased to 6 and 12, which is much more similar to the historic home across Nursery and in the vicinity. So we believe that, oh, and also the doors were changed. There were no doors originally on Nursery Street. And so Nursery Street now has a door. And so the rhythm of openings is more consistent with what you'll see in a historic home. And it's not uncommon for 2 front doors on a house. It is a little uncommon for 3. So this has relieved that. This is the largest of all the structures. And so we compared this 2,352 square foot building to the average house sizes within 200 feet of the property, and the average in this area, 200 feet from this house, is about 2,280 square feet. So we're within just under 200 square feet of the average house size in the area. This is the floor plan of the proposed SRO, the wraparound porch, the unit entrances, their bathrooms. They have a little wet bar area, and then the shared kitchen. Each of the residents will have a covered access to that kitchen area. As noted in the memo included with the arborist report, the ailanthus tree is in poor condition and it should not be preserved. To address some of the concerns, so as far as street trees and an irrigation plan and that sort of thing, I don't believe it's appropriate to request those prior to a building permit application. The irrigation will be associated with each single family home. And then they'll have to choose trees from the recommended street tree guide based on sort of the limited planting area that they have. They have a 20-foot front yard setback, and then there's overhead power lines. So they'll have to pick small street trees on the nursery side, and then there are able to be larger stature trees on the North Main side. So essentially what I'm saying is that we like the condition of approval that's already in the packet, that the street trees be shown with the building permit submittal, and then they get planted before certificate of occupancy. That's a really typical way things are handled in a situation like this. As far as the additional reasons for the exception to street standards on Nursery Street side, losing the additional dimension to the lot's only about 63 feet deep, and so losing 10 feet of that would have a pretty substantial ramification on the buildability of those lots. You'd have barely enough width to have a lot depth that could have a house on it and meet all the other setbacks. So anyways, in conclusion, we believe that the commission can find the proposed Skidmore Square subdivision to conform with the performance standards subdivision criteria, and the revisions demonstrate compliance with the Historic Advisory Committee's recommendations and provides revisions to the mass scale, form, and orientation of the proposed residential dwellings, consistent with the Historic Advisory Commission recommendations. We hope the conditional use permit to exceed maximum permitted floor area can be approved. And in the event that the public hearing is continued, the applicant team would request that the findings be adopted at the same time as the meeting. Instead of waiting a month for the findings to come back and be adopted, we'd ask that they be adopted at the same meeting, mainly because the property owner would like to have these new residences under construction before summer. Thank you.
Go for it.
So this is a comment. In the beginning of your presentation, you said that it would cost $1 million to, so $1 million or $750,000, and I don't believe you can build 4 buildings for less than that anyway. So just want to think that that's somewhat of a not a good lead-in for a presentation, because if you look at the cost of this versus the cost of that, this is more money. So it's not a rationale.
Not really, because restoration and renovation price per square foot is approximately $400, where new construction can be down around $200 to $250.
Sure, so these 4 buildings are still going to cost more than renovating the existing structure from us. It's just, bear with me.
I think because
you know,
in
really.
the ordinance, the demo ordinance, you also include the market price of the property and that sort of thing. And so the sales price of these
I'm
is
not arguing
greater,
with
so
that.
yeah.
I'm just arguing with the.
But I don't think I should have to prove financially that this structure is a problem, but the
No, but
demolition
so-
code requires
so-
me to. So, yeah, so that's the reason why we did it. We don't have to even talk about the demolition of the structure. It is not the purview of the planning commission. It is the building official. He has met me on site. All we have to do is submit the
I
application.
don't think there's a problem with them demolishing it. I'm just using that as an argument for approval. It makes no sense to me. That's all.
No, it was just bringing it up to your all's attention that it will cost substantial amounts of money to try to rehab or restore that building. And $1 million was just the starting point. I can tell you 40 Granite Street, they're well over $1 million, and they have not built an apartment yet. So.
Susan?
But I did hear you say very clearly that building 4 buildings would be less than $750K, which I don't believe. You know, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Ken Karen, and I'm building an addition right now that is proving that for better or worse.
I guess I should have stated all of the building criteria for demolition and factors and all of the other factors as well. So it's not a direct ratio of demolition to reconstruction. There's more to it, so.
I don't see anything in here that tells me why we should approve the 25% increase. Why?
You didn't see the findings or, I mean, the applicant's
Why
findings?
should we approve that in this particular location?
So I believe that it is warranted because these are new homes. They are consistent with the square footages of homes in the area. As Mr. Goldman noted, the garages are included in that floor area of the house. So it sort of artificially increases the floor area to appear like we're building almost 1,700 square feet, where it's really around a 1,450. The conditional use permit criteria requires that you address architectural compatibility, which we feel we have done, especially with the modifications. It asks for, let me look at what I wrote. So it's consistent with the standards of the zone to request it. The dwellings are designed to reflect architectural character, materials, ensures visual compatibility, has capacity for city utilities, and then it goes through each one of the, does it generate more traffic? No. Is it architecturally compatible? It can be found to be architecturally compatible. Is it odors or environmental pollutants generated by this versus a single family? Not more. And so we believe that there's no greater adverse effect on the livability of the zone, which is one of the criteria. We believe that it's consistent with the scale and the massing of the other structures in the historic district. They're designed to be modest. It's a modest increase when you consider it proportionally to the square footage of the building. It essentially is like the square footage of the garage is the amount of the increased area. Having a garage is better than having just parking on site or no parking at all and using all that square footage for the dwelling area and having all the parking be out on the street. So I believe that going through the 4 different standards and the substandards, really it comes down to an architectural compatibility standard in this case, I do believe. And I believe that's architecturally compatible. These buildings are architecturally compatible with the historic district, and especially with the modifications.
What I heard was an argument for garages. I mean, you already stated that this neighborhood is diverse in its architectural form and vernacular. These look like tract homes to me, quite frankly, which don't look historical, and therefore what I heard was an argument for garages. That's my opinion.
I disagree. I believe there's a lot more to these buildings than just the garage. That's just one thing that is a part of it, but really there's all sorts of architecture in this neighborhood. I think these buildings are architecturally compatible when you go 200 feet out.
But garages became the argument for making them larger.
That's
versus
just, I said that's
cottage
just
homes?
one component of it. That's just one component of why they are larger, but I think that garages are an important piece of a single-family home. And you have questions about how do we address parking, while at the same time saying don't put in a garage or suggesting that the garages is negative. So I believe that this design is architecturally compatible. We've taken great measures to meet with the Historic Review Board and recommendations were, and that the design does fit within the zone and it's not offensive to the neighborhood and the livability of the
To
neighborhood.
clarify, I asked about parking for the SRO, which there is none of being provided, versus the homes which do have individual parking.
Okay.
I want to make that clear.
Here.
Hi, Amy. To be architecturally compatible, why isn't the front building a 2-story? The neighboring properties are 2-story. The property across the street's a 2-story. Why does the owner decide to go with a 1-story? And then also, to follow up with that, why such a simple architectural plan was presented, knowing that the historical advisory committee is probably going to reject that, and they're wanting to expeditiously push this project forward? Yeah, how do you
I think
address
there's the property owners taking great efforts to try to reduce the cost of this construction of this building so that it's not a $350 to $400 per square foot building. a two-story element adds a requirement for accessibility because of the building code type of this building, and being that it is like a single-family home, essentially, it should be held to the same standards as single-family homes versus apartment complexes, but it's not. It's held in the building code to this more, it's R3 occupancy under the building code. So there's all sorts of other ramifications for firewalls, and they have to be sprinklered and all these different requirements. And so that's why we went with a single family, or single story, I'm sorry. And then also because the lot area is fairly large, that it left quite a large yard area for use by those tenants, even with a single story structure. And then the elevation, we had suggested dormers and different elevation treatments to make the building more interesting. And I'm not a building designer. I can try to get things. I can only do so much.
Gotcha.
And now we have this change, which I think is a pretty substantial change, and I think it really makes the building look substantially nicer. It reflects the Bayberry Inn across the street. It has some elements of the houses that are up on the other side of the duplexes.
The Bayberry Inn across the street does have a significant second floor dormer. And these have lofts in them too, right?
They do not have lofts because they cannot have lofts. It's counted as floor area in the gross floor area of the building under the building code, which then increased the floor area of these buildings.
I thought I saw that on the floor plan, stairs going up and.
There was a proposal for that, but that was the plan originally. That was they preferred to have a loft, but we're not able to per the building code. So there's no stairs. It's just.
So take out that.
Do we get that update? I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
It
from
may have
staff.
been in the packet of things sent today.
The new one that's sent today? Okay.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
received
sorry
that today, and so it was.
Some iterations that did have loft space.
Yeah.
If they were included, they weren't intended to be included in.
There was a really preliminary floor plan originally that did show like a stair and only one bathroom
yeah.
in the whole building. Yeah, that was very, very preliminary.
Okay, so just to clarify, not two-story because due to the fact that the SRO and access, it's prohibited to go.
It didn't prohibit it, it just would change how the building is constructed, add costs. There could be a potential for an elevator. Each of these units they're not accessible, like ADA accessible, all being single level. They're all accessible to most people in that they can get into the unit. They don't have to go upstairs. There's no upstairs storage, that sort of thing. But that's why it didn't turn out to be a two-story.
Okay. When we get into discussion, one thing I would ask the rendering that's now on the table, that one right there. I mean, there's been no architecture engineering added to this element. Like, are the stairs high enough? Do we have enough depth in the stairs? Is that even possible to be built? We haven't gotten that far because we're just reacting to what the Historical Society said at this point.
My understanding is the designer did look at the grading sheet of this. He looked at the topography of the site when he placed this building where he did, which led to that number of stairs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that building shows no retaining wall along Main Street or Nursery Street. So are you proposing now to take out that retaining wall?
No, the retaining wall would stay. This is merely just like a modeling of the building. Don't look at the plants. I can't say that those bushes are going to be there. It's a modeling of the building so that you can see the railings, the porch, the walkway, the doors, the eaves, the gable ends.
So it's not a real
The
plan?
steeper pitch roof. No, it is a real plan. I'm showing the building, all these things. Models often don't show retaining walls. They have it's a detail that wasn't left on this plan, but it's not coming out. It's in the public right of way. Yeah. Yeah, it just doesn't show that retaining wall.
Susan?
I read somewhere in here, so with the new design and no upstairs access, is there still one single attic for the entire building?
The units will have vaulted ceilings, so that's the reason for the skylight, so there's not
Okay.
like an attic space up above.
Okay.
And that's why we looked at clipping the gables of the building. It made it look very strange, and it also affects how you pitch the roof or how you do the interior with the skylights.
One other question, will this be governed by an HOA?
No, they're each single-family lots on their own parcels. There's no interconnected utilities or things like that.
How does a building like this function? I mean, you have a manager that lives there or something?
The other one that I'm aware of, yes, there's a manager that lives on site, and then there's 5 rooms rented out.
Interesting.
This one, the property owners has a number of rentals that he operates, and I think he has something sort of similar.
Interesting.
Essentially, it's like you lease a room in a building.
So I've looked at probably a dozen of these SROs. We manage 8, I think. Did you give any consideration to just putting an interior hallway?
Yeah, I know, that makes sense.
I'm just curious, like what design iteration you went through to arrive here. The closest analogy I can think of is like farm worker housing that I've seen. But I've seen a lot of them. I've never seen anything like this.
I believe that the interior stair was removed, or interior hallway was removed to have more room in the actual bedrooms themselves,
Sure.
since we're restricted with such our small floor area. Not far from here, at the intersection of Main and Skidmore, catty corner across the street, there's a yellow house that had, I think, 8 units in the back, and they all shared a kitchen and a bathroom. They didn't even have their own bathrooms, and they had to walk across the backyards. So that's just across North Main Street from this property. So it's not an unseen design in the neighborhood. But yeah, it was to essentially allow for larger bedrooms.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's time for the public to make comments. I have one speaker request form. If there are more people who are in the audience who would like to speak, please fill out the pink sheet in the back. Nate Wittenberg, please come forward. Here? Sure. State your name and address, please.
There's a button on that mic that needs to be turned.
Thank you. My name is Nate Wittenberg. I live at 245 Van Ness Avenue. I've been living in the close vicinity of North Main Street since 1996, and at my current home since I purchased it in 1999 by Briscoe School in the Minute Market. So I'm familiar with the property. I don't have any connection to whomever recently purchased it, the property in question, and will be tearing it down. But assuming that it were to pass the things that it needs to pass as far as you guys approving it is concerned, I thank them for doing the neighborhood and the city a favor by ridding us of an unsightly, unkempt, and probably rat-infested hovel, which has basically been the appearance of that building since I can remember. However, what I'm here to discuss is what I read on the notice for this public hearing, which at least suggests that the city is asking the new owners to get a permit to remove a mature tree of heaven. Let me be clear that I think that protection of trees is extremely important and that there should be strict rules regarding their removal. The tree of heaven is an extremely invasive species that now ecologically impacts almost all parts of this country. After having originally been introduced to Pennsylvania in 1784, no birds or native insects are interested in the tree of heaven. It displaces native trees and plants, releasing toxins into the soils around it to prevent other flora from growing nearby. It spreads prolifically, with a mature female producing up to 900,000 seeds per year. It's extremely difficult to control because it resprouts from trunks and roots. The wood is too soft and uneven to have any commercial value. So I'm here to question the planning department for charging $105 for a tree removal permit when that tree is a mature female tree of heaven. It could already cost the owners $1,500 to $2,000 to have the tree professionally removed. Plus, they're doing the city, in my opinion, they're doing the city and our neighborhood a huge favor by getting rid of it. They are not asking to destroy a heritage tree or a native pine, a fir, an oak, or a madrone. This tree is not on a hillside where soil erosion might be a problem if it were removed. The only arguable benefit of the tree in question might be shade, and it's not even positioned properly on the property to provide shade. This is an invasive nuisance tree with zero value, and penalizing anyone in the form of a fee for removing it or removing this tree or arguably any tree of heaven is highly unethical in my opinion and plain wrong. It's upsetting that our city council is not making exception for tree of heaven in the sections of the tree preservation and protection codes. Furthermore, the city of Ashland should not be threatening citizens like myself for making it a felony to control or abate a tree of heaven on city property when this invasive weed is spreading throughout the Rogue Valley like wildfire. The city turns a blind eye to this problem when at the very least it should be educating the public about this tree and encouraging its citizens to remove every single tree of heaven within our city limits. I would go further to say that if the city were truly wanting to protect our cities and this valley's environment, then they would be allocating resources to subsidizing homeowners' removal of these trees, if not even destroying these trees themselves. But what the city should definitely not be doing is extracting a fee from someone who is trying to do our society a favor by removing a tree of heaven, especially a mature female. And that, in my mind, is sort of disturbingly what's going on here. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Should I leave this on?
I have one.
Sure.
So are you on a, and trust me, I agree with you as far as the trees, but the tree of heaven anyway, because they're a pain. But when did you start being an advocate for anti-tree of heaven advocate?
Probably as soon as I learned.
Could you go back to the microphone, please? Thank you.
And so I don't think that the city charges the tree permit fee as part of the application process. It's not to diss this developer for doing what he's doing. So, I mean, they're not penalizing him. Yeah.
With a subdivision application, the cost of noticing is already absorbed in the outline and final plan, so the applicant for a subdivision does not pay a street tree removal application fee independently, so they were not charged that. That differs if it's a single lot with an existing tree that comes in and requests a street tree removal permit, at which point the collected fee covers notification of the neighborhood, which is required by code, where we send direct mail to 200 properties within 200 feet of that property.
So this project did not require a fee?
Correct.
Yeah, so he was not.
So if I would have bought this property and just wanted to remodel the home, I wouldn't have been charged to take down that tree of heaven?
No, you would, because the fee is really for the public notice, as required by our code for any tree removal, street tree removal. In this case, if the prior property owner had requested to remove that tree independent of subdivision, we would have collected a street tree removal permit fee so that we could have the resource to notify the neighborhood, process the application, and if appealed, hold a public hearing related to it.
Well, then that's what I would have objected to, and I'm sorry that I objected to it, not knowing that this person, the new owners, didn't have to pay a fee for that.
Yeah, they paid a substantial fee for the subdivision application.
Oh,
which
I'm
covered
sure.
those.
Yes. Okay, and the answer to the original question was, I probably started learning more about it when I bought the property that I live in now, which had a tree of heaven on it. And I liked it because it was a shade tree, but I eventually got rid of it. Yeah.
No, they're all over this. I live in that neighborhood too, so they're all over the place. So,
I know.
yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have any more speakers. Okay, no more speakers from the public.
So just to further note that should the commission want to have the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee make a evaluation of the revised submittal, we would need to keep the public
Hearing
record open
Right.
in order to receive that information. Thank you.
So what's your pleasure?
I would like to make a motion to leave the public record open so that we can get a response from the,
Hearing? Public
from the public record. I'm sorry, yeah.
Not the public hearing.
Leave the public, both public record and hearing open so that we have an opportunity to hear back from the Historical Advisory Committee by our next meeting, February 10th. And, yeah.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Real quick, could I modify that to include the tree mac? I think that getting some input on the eradication of this tree, if they choose to remove it, is important.
Okay.
Okay, so to have Tree Mac review the arborist submission that's been submitted after Tree Mac?
Yes,
After Mac,
correct.
okay.
Yep.
I accept that, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're not closing anything, we can, where's our discussion
Next time.
next time?
Yeah. You want to make some comments?
I would like to make a suggestion about the design of the single-family houses. Can I
Okay.
do that now?
Let's get the vote first, and then you can make your comment. Let's
Okay.
finish the vote.
Vote, I thought we weren't closing it.
We're not, but we have to vote to continue it.
Sorry.
Because there's a motion on the table.
Yeah, so. Michael, we call the roll?
Commissioner McCracken Jen.
Yes.
Commissioner Lininger.
Yes.
Commissioner Marr.
Aye.
Commissioner Herron.
Yes.
Commissioner Kincairn.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Chair Werner.
Yes. Okay, we have continued this public hearing to February 10th, 2026. Thank you very much for being here. Did you have a comment?
I just think that railings on all those all three of the porches, not just on one of them, would really help the aesthetic of those houses and bring them more into a place that you actually might sit and bring them more into keeping with the historic district. That's all. Because only one of them has a rail on the front.
Okay, we're moving on to open discussion. Are there any topics anybody'd like to bring up at this point? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, and our next meeting will be January 27th, which will be a study session with the City Council and Housing and Human Services. Commission, Advisory Committee, where we will
I'm-
talk about the manufactured housing draft ordinance that's being done for us. Want to make a motion?
I motion that we close?
Adjourn.
Adjourn?
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
Yes.
All those opposed? So moved. Thank you very much.
Horrible.
Like what he wrote.